Hi, this is Mike of Lily House Permaculture. So this is going to be our third video on zones, and this one is going to be brief, just a quick exercise to walk you through a little bit of a zone analysis of your site. So feel free to pause, go back, or watch this over again if you want to as we move through the zones and your site. So to begin with, you want to make a sketch or use a map that you can write on and draw over for your property. So if you don't have that, you can pause right now and get that ready. Once you have your map of your site ready, sit down, and to begin with, we're going to start looking at Zone 1. Let's start by actually analyzing the places that you actually visit naturally on a daily basis. I like to use colored pencils, make little, use one color for each, or markers, one color for each zone, and so that keeps things clear. So once you've selected your color for Zone 1, start marking the places that you visit naturally on a daily basis around your property. This might be around your car, between your car and your door, the car in the mailbox, any place else that you feel compelled to visit, to go out naturally to spend some time. As you develop your site, those areas are going to grow because you're going to want to be spending more time outside. Mark off any areas that are especially sunny that might be easy for you to fence off. Those are going to be some of your best sites for Zone 1 gardens. Mark any areas near downspouts, because access to water and automatic watering systems in your Zone 1 garden are going to bring a huge value. Finally, you might even pick a few small areas of shade next to your Zone 1 area for some shade-tolerant crops. Next, pick a new color, and we're going to identify Zone 3 when you're ready. Now that you've got your color selected, we're going to skip out a zone to Zone 3. These are going to be the main areas where we could set aside for high-value crops and cropping system, and commercial crops, and also calorie crops for a homestead. Not all sites are going to even have a Zone 3, so if you live on a very small site, start by asking yourself the question, are you planning on producing any commercial crops on your site? And how limited is your land? We get the least economic value out of growing calorie crops and carbon crops at our home. We get the highest economic value off of growing expensive things like greens and tomatoes and fruit, things that are perennial vegetables, things that are really expensive or rare at the store. Whereas a lot of our calorie crops tend to be much lower cost, for a reason. So if you have a small site, then your Zone 3 might not be there, or it might be quite small. If you are going to have a Zone 3, start by identifying any of the largest areas on the property. They're all contiguous and sunny. Especially, usually it's considered in a temperate climate that you need about 2-acre forest opening in order to get enough sun into the system to successfully grow market garden crops that you might use for a Zone 3 garden. Otherwise, you might be looking at mushroom production or something like that for your Zone 3. Anyway, this area has to be larger to be valuable for a commercial crop. Usually, these areas are easy to figure out. Most people, when they buy their property, have already identified an area that they might use for a market garden or other economically valuable crop on their site. Once we've identified Zone 3, we can look back and brainstorm Zone 2, which are usually the areas that are on the edges of Zone 1 and areas that connect Zone 1 to Zone 3. We'll be visiting quite a lot. So, find a new color for Zone 2 and start looking out areas that might be appropriate for an orchard. These don't need quite as much sun. usually as some of the sunnier spots in Zone 1 and Zone 3. A lot of our favorite fruit trees and forest garden crops can actually grow in a bit more shade, which is good for us to know. These could be around the edges of Zone 1, areas that are pressed out a little bit further. You might want hedgerows or something like this to define your Zone 1 property, fence it in, keep it safe, keep some larger animals like deer out, or at least help with that. Think about areas where you might have other special social uses where you wouldn't be going on a day-to-day basis to hang out, but they might be family spaces, family gathering areas, things like this you might want to integrate into Zone 2. Think about if you're going to have animals. Typically, these are placed out somewhere between Zone 2 and Zone 3. If they're too close to the home, then they can cause, especially larger animals, noise or smell issues, issues with the neighbors. So out by Zone 3 usually is good, but you also don't want them too far away because you want to be able to see them, you want to be able to check on them on really a daily basis, and you don't want to have to get on, take a plane flight out to check on the animals a few times a day. Next, we'll be looking at the more extensive zones, Zone 4. So grab another colored pencil for that. Once you get to Zone 4, there's only one question. What kind of forest do you want to have? If we're structuring our lives to be energy efficient and make the best use of our time, once we get out to Zone 4, we don't have a lot of extra time to be doing things. So we really have to be handing the keys over to nature, figuring out systems of succession that move towards forest if we don't already have forest. Or they can be areas of the property that are already forested that you're deciding to leave forested and use forest crops for. So these tend to be out beyond Zone 3. They can be positioned to give shelter to Zone 3. They can be positioned to give shelter to our home. Are there also other places around the property that are hard to access? Steep slopes. Steep slopes we always want to keep in forest. They're going to be hard to work anyway, and the forest is one of the best things we can do to maintain and keep away erosion. Is there an area that has a top of a hill by your site? Traditionally, in many cultures, these are forested because the forest then creates the fertility that will trickle down hill to your site. Usually, getting up to the top of a hill takes more energy anyway, so that becomes a more extensive system. And having that ability to have the fertility trickle down to your other gardens in Zone 3 becomes a huge benefit. We're talking about ways of maintaining fertility in our Zone 3 gardens that are easier to do. Beyond this, there's Zone 5. Every property needs a Zone 5, even if it's small. A place where we really are taking a hands-off approach and nature is doing all of the work. We're only coming there to visit. On large properties, Zone 5 ends up being larger and larger. Anything beyond what we need to meet our needs and grow our own crops and have an economically viable situation for ourselves should be turned over to Zone 5. Now, take a break, take a little time off of this, go walk the property again, think about zones, and come back and look this over, go over it again. Next, we're going to be getting into sectors. We're going to do a quick sector analysis video like this too, and then we're going to put those together, go back and forth between the two, consider all those lists of elements that you would like to have on your site, and from there, let that start to really determine your plan. That is what we'll be getting into next time.